definitely attracted a lot of narcissists to religious institutions. I've heard that about 1% of the population, about 1 out of 6 people are narcissists. And about 82 to 125 million people on this planet are narcissists. People who use and manipulate people. There's something about hardcore religion that draws the crazies and the narcissists. Because where there's spiritual or political power, you're going to find narcissists. And I have met some narcissists in church, and it's very, very surprising. I did not know that these people were narcissists back in the day, but based on their lack of remorse, empathy, they used people for their own advantage, they ruined people's lives. I can't not see them as a narcissist. And when you have a music minister that plants adult pornography on a very kind pastor's computer to get him fired, to take his place, which you're not qualified for, he had not gone to seminary and could not be a pastor like an ordained preacher. This is the narcissism I'm talking about. Tearing apart several churches I've been to gain power for a position you're not qualified for. And you have to have an 85% majority to vote a pastor in, at least in most Baptist churches. And he could not get it. And to drive people out of churches to take a revote is the kind of narcissism I'm talking about. And anytime somebody, especially a white cis heterosexual man, is in power, I always wonder if the person is a narcissist, especially in a church. Because where there's absolute power given by some god you worship, you're adding an extra layer of a power imbalance. And religious power is seldomly to almost never checked. It can take decades for pastors who were awful people who took advantage of the vulnerable women and children to get clocked, to have justice and comeuppance come after them and finally catch them. Spiritual power, spiritual narcissism, spiritual abuse is seldomly to never targeted and eradicated. And I read that they found out there was a lot of narcissistic cover-up and abuse in Assemblies of God churches in the U.S. I'm not surprised. I mean, I grew up in Southern Baptist and Calvinistic fundamentalism. Except for Catholics, we're number 2 for the highest CSA, SA of any denomination. We are number 1 in the Protestant sphere. It is not a coincidence that religion attracts the worst predators in human history. People like Jim Jones and David Koresh and Marshall Applewhite. There's a reason why these cult and religious leaders are just terrible. Terrible. And yeah, I'm never going to lie and say that there's not some amazing, compassionate, kind, spiritual leaders, whether they're female, male, or anything in between. But there's something about religion that desperately attracts the most unhinged, cruel, narcissistic people. And when you look at the people who spiritually assist Trump, that at least 10 of them, 8 of them were white men, have been arrested for sex crimes against children and vulnerable women. It is not a coincidence that these things happen. Because where there is absolute divinity, absolute power, from an invisible, made-up God, who's a man, usually, you are setting people up for that power imbalance and the inability to make choices. If a pastor says that God said this, almost nobody in any church I've been to ever questions it, publicly or privately. It's just not something anyone dares to do. And narcissism is a problem. It's always been a problem. And I can't and won't, by any means, allow myself to be in an environment that just does terrible, terrible things to people. And being an atheist, I don't rely on Christian right to be in charge. I avoid narcissism secularly and religiously because I have the capability and knowledge to do that.